middle of an hour, when someone says rap to you, that's just you don't care about it.
No, I care about that.
It's not for real.
No, it's not about it not being for real. It's that there is some
flexibility.
Flexibility there. Exactly.
There.
Like we're into the 5 p.m. hour here. Let's say we're planning on breaking at 5:20. If we break at 5:22, that's the house of cards is not going to fold.
That's why it's been driving me nuts, because I'm so used to when someone says you got to get out, I'm like, you're
TV.
done.
That's
done.
TV.
At the end of the hour, that is absolutely true. We do not have flexibility at the end of the hour. But you've been doing this a long time. You're just picking up on this?
Yeah.
Like, what are you
I thought it
talking
was
about?
that's why I start shaking my head. I'm like, these guys are still blabbing. It's like when I'm doing TV and Bill Dodson says, get out of this and give it back to Duthie. I'm out. I'm like, that's it.
And that is the truth at the end of the hour. If JP will be in my ear and say, go, 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 and I know I got to go, I will pull a tatty at that point and say, that's enough. We're going. But we have the ability to be a little bit flexible during the hour.
Should have told me 7 years ago.
Wow, I know, but
I figured you would have picked up on that by now. And you're guilty of this, too.
Yeah,
you get
course.
going. Like, let's not pretend
no
that you're
way. That is
to...
one thing.
Hold on a second.
JP, can you confirm that I am actually never guilty of that?
He's guilty of it.
JP.
How many times have we seen this?
I think everyone
motion?
has equal responsibility.
JP, actually,
Right.
you sewered me on the GM thing, the interviews, and you picked Noodles, and now you're sewering me on this. That is not that is an incorrect statement.
Well, Noodles brings up a great point. There have been times on TV.
Right.
We're on TV, and you'll say stretch, like
Yeah,
stretch.
you do
we got a
the
good
signal.
interview going.
Like you go,
right?
like
No,
stretch
that
this one out.
means. Well, here's another
That's
one.
the same
we'll
thing.
have a great interview, and it'll be 2 questions. You'll be like, "Nah, thanks for doing this. Have a good day." And I'm like, "What the hell's going on here?"
Right. And
You interview that guy for half an hour. That's when I say stretch
But
it
that's
out.
the point.
Give him a heater.
All of a sudden you have half an hour, but other times you only have 20 minutes. That's the beauty of it. We do have that type of flexibility.
Yeah.
And,
But
and you're privy to it. You just maybe don't know it directly, but indirectly you've been absolutely taking advantage of that option for 7, 8 years
I'm telling you, that first segment, the 4 o'clock segment, 5 o'clock segment, and 6 o'clock segment, there is flexibility.
Yes.
And that's where we use it. But the other day, I could have been announcing an extension for Austin Matthews, and the Tat Man would have just dropped the lights on me. He would have cut me
Absolutely.
off.
He took a ninja sword to your kneecaps and said, "You're done."
Yeah, absolutely.
The
would've
look
cut you
on
off.
his face, like I actually didn't see it. Going back at it,
He's
he is
really uncomfortable with you talking. You
Exactly.
breathing is something he'd prefer not to see.
He was horse-eyeing that clock and the producer.
He was
like,
asking with his eyes for the producers to completely cut your mic. Like mid-word, just cut your mic.
I love it.
And then you guys throw yes guys at him. He doesn't even flinch. That's how you knew he was serious. You're yelling yes guy at him, and he's just like, I don't care. You can have that one for free. All right. Joining us now on the Maple Toyota hotline, here's our TSN hockey insider, Darren Dreger. What's happening, Dregs?
Yeah, not much. Just kind of gearing up for another busy week in the world. That's the way it kind of feels.
Yeah, seems that way, huh?
Yeah. I mean, kind of calmed a little bit, I would say, over the weekend, and that's not unusual. And I'm not going to make any bold predictions and say there's going to be blockbusters this week, but they're definitely interested, eager teams trying to get something going. But when you get this close to the draft, then you wonder if it's better to keep the power, right? And see if that pick or picks involved or any of that can improve as you get closer to making the move to Nashville, which for a number of end of the week or on the weekend.
Dregs, remind me, was Brad Treliving's a guy who's a very active manager, but is he a guy that kind of works behind the scenes? Do you hear a lot of chatter about him being in and stuff, or is it just all of a sudden it gets done and he presents it?
Okay, so as you're asking that question, I'm kind of chuckling to myself because Brad Treliving is in on everything. Like, he has thousands of conversations over the course of the year, and he was noted for that. And that's not a criticism. That's a reality. He's a guy that wants to be in on everything. Now, he can't pull the trigger on a fraction of any of that, but he wants to know what the rest of the league is up to because, hey, if there's an opportunity to improve his team, formerly Calgary, now Toronto, then he's going to want to do that. So I think it's a little bit different for Tree Living right now because, he's got a lot going on around the Maple Leafs. He spent time with Sheldon Keefe. He recently met with Austin Matthews in that group, and William Nylander has to be top priority or right up there on July 1st. And he's got a crop of unrestricted free agents. You have to wonder if he has any interest in any of them. So all that has is full right now, but in answering your question, Noodles, he's noted among other general managers as being a guy who's always in almost everything. And some of them get pissed off because he kind of gums it up a bit for them, right? But no, he's always heavily involved.
Early on in the show, Darren, Bryan Hayes was just saying, well, I'm sure you know it's Bryan Hayes.
Yeah.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
That was a bad comment. He was basically stating the fact that, they got to plug the holes in the lineup, which we've discussed at length. But other than that, it's Dubas gone, and it's going to be the same cast of characters. Is that what we're kind of to understand here?
For the most part, I think that's true. They like the group in general, but they're not ignorant to the fact that, okay, there's been enough time here. But with new management, are they good with going at least one more year with the core four? And I don't think that anybody can honestly answer that with any sort of knowledge to this point. We know that Shani reached out to that core four prior to the hiring of Tree Living, by the way, and said it was his intent to keep them together. It wasn't a promise. That was what he wanted to do. But that's kind of in reference to Nylander and his contract status, and Austin Matthews and his contract status. So it feels that way, but then you have to look at some of the obvious scenarios here. Like, what's going to become of Matt Murray? What do they do with, the likes of the holes that they're going to create in their bottom six? Like, how do you fill those? Can they be a bigger game hunter? I keep looking at Barbashev as an example, and I still think Barbashev is more likely, Kelly McCrimmon finds a way to pull rabbits out of the hat. So we'll see whether or not he can retain Barbashev. But if he can't, and I remember having this conversation with his agent, with Barbashev's agent, Dan Milstein, not that long ago, and I think they were hopeful that they could climb into the high fours on whatever the term was. He's a pretty good player. So I feel like that's what Brad Treliving needs to consume himself with is, okay, if you've got a little bit of flexibility, assuming there's any flexibility, to try and change things in the bottom six or on defense, how creative can you be in doing that? And I think that's kind of his focus at this stage.
Yeah, and I mean, that would have happened if Dubas was here. Listen, Dubas left, and it happened, and Trey Living comes in, and Trey Living, I think, is a good guy for the job. I'm not anti-Brad Trey Living hiring at all, but if Sheldon Keefe returns, the four forwards up front return, and Morgan Rielly returns, I'm sorry, this fan base is going to completely check out anything else they do. That's just the facts. I don't care what else they do. I don't care who else they trade, who else they sign. If Keefe comes back, the four forwards and Morgan Rielly, you just get to game one and then see what happens. Because I don't believe there will not be a spark in this fan base. If anything, people are going to be remarkably disappointed.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, Brian. I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate it. And I know you speak for the fan base when you say that. Yes,
thank you.
He does. He's the voice of Toronto sports.
I get it. Yeah, I understand that. I mean, sports is fickle, right? And so are the fans. They just want to win, period. They just want to win. So let's see what sort of magic that Tree Living can create here. And, if he's going to find a way to retain William Nylander longer term, then that's going to be an exercise. How is that going to improve this team this year? Aside from the obvious, I guess you have a motivated and a committed William Nylander. I don't know. I'm with you to a point. I never kind of pay attention to what the fan base is saying, even though, hey, in most markets, certainly the Canadian markets, and it's an educated group. But what are your options here? You know, I talk to Winnipeg fairly frequently, and I look at what they've got with Hellebuck and Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois. And, yeah, there's interest in those players, but I don't get the sense, and, you know, there's still a lot of road ahead here, that anyone is, like, blowing doors off to get a hold of those guys. So if you want to throw Marner or somebody like that into the equation because you feel like that has to be Brad Treliving's stamp, he's got to come in as a new GM and change things immediately. What if the return isn't nearly as good as you're hoping or expecting? Do you do it anyway?
No, I wouldn't suggest doing that. I guess my point is, you know, Shanahan's been here long before Treliving showed up, right? So it's not as if this is a completely new administration. Right. Yeah. It's not. I mean, we all know Shanahan's fingerprints are all over everything here. The point I'm getting to, I guess, is it doesn't mean you can't make, you know, tangible change, tangible improvements, and put the team in a better spot. What I'm saying is the four forwards, Morgan Rielly, Sheldon Keefe, that's what represents this team. And everything else, for the most part, has filtered in and out, right? Yeah. They've tried every combination of different pieces, and it hasn't worked. And this will be, you know, the fifth chapter of that, sixth, seventh chapter. I'm just saying, I think fans will be like, wow, okay, let's see what happens.
What you're getting at is the coach, and Morgan Rielly was fantastic.
He was great in the playoffs. But he's the longest-standing player, is my point.
And Austin Matthews, he's going to get the benefit of the doubt every time. Yeah. He was great in the Tampa series. But the other guys, it's like, and you don't just give up necessarily, but what do you watch in the last 3 or 4 years in the playoffs where you look at it and say, I got to have that back, like, non-negotiable. I got to have all that back. It's like, I don't know how you look at it that way.
Yeah, I hear you. But let's start with the coach here for a moment, right? So I know you guys, everybody thinks that, Shanny is the puppet master and he's pulling all the strings, and there's no doubt he has influence. I mean, of course he does. He's the boss. But I would have been more skeptical of any general manager coming in this case, Brad Treliving, if the first thing he does is dispatch Sheldon Keefe. And I can understand why he would do that for everything you've said, Brian, and you've kind of chimed on that. I get it, but as I'm always reminded, a new general manager, any general manager, only has so many bullets, right? So you come in and the first thing you do is fire one off on a coach who you don't know. And I think that would have been a mistake. I'm not suggesting here that Sheldon Keefe has an extended life with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I also appreciate why Treliving would want to first get to know him a little bit. And he got to know him enough to believe that, okay, this guy can coach, or at least I believe in what he's telling me. I'm not going to waste a bullet there. So where's the first one he's going to fire? We don't know that. It could be a trade. We like to think in the insider business we know what's going on. We don't know everything. So there's a lot of runway here between now and the start of training camp. So who knows what the Toronto Maple Leafs are capable of, but it won't be a coach firing.
Is it possible, Dregs, that, it's forced by a situation where you get Matthews done, or you believe you can get him done, but it's maybe a little bit more contentious with Willie, or the number just seems like it doesn't fit or something like that, and maybe you're forced into that situation? Do you believe that they have the luxury of time? Like, would Nylander be anxious to get a deal done, or is it kind of just, hey, let's deal with Matthews, and then Nylander kind of falls in?
Well, Jamie, wouldn't you say that he's a guy that everyone that scores 40 goals, it's like July 1st, they're locked up, so he's probably saying, I better be in the same boat as that.
Hold on a second here. That's the only thing, though. I brought this up the other day. Look at the DeBrincat situation. He scored 41 twice, and they're taking him to arbitration. So now that's going to be a scenario because his qualifying number was at 9. Ottawa doesn't want to pay that. So it'd be interesting to see what happens.
Well,
You know?
I hear you, Noodles. I think DeBrincat is different, though, for whatever reason, and there are lots of reasons why players just want to change, right?
Right.
And, I think DeBrincat, from a hockey perspective, aside from being number 2 on the left side behind Brady Tkachuk, he's got a pretty good situation there, right?
Yep.
But, the family comes into play, and you want different things for different reasons. And I don't think it has a whole lot to do with Ottawa per se, or the money that Ottawa might be willing to pay him. Because truthfully, they've never really engaged in a contract discussion, negotiation in Ottawa between DeBrincat and the Sens. And both, I think Ottawa has certainly been open to that, and it just hasn't manifested. So let's go back to Toronto here and Willie.
Sure.
I think, Willie is well advised. He's got a pretty strong understanding of what his worth is or his market value is. I don't think that he's as motivated by any sort of deadline or any of that, but I think Toronto is. I think Toronto realizes that, okay, when July 1st kicks around, he's got to be up there. They've already had the Matthews conversation, but Matthews' conversation with Treliving and Shane Doan and whoever else was in the meeting isn't specific to term and numbers. Matthews wants to know, what's this team going to look like? What's your vision, Brad Treliving, of how you think this team is going to be better in the next year or 2 or 3? And that was a conversation with the Matthews camp. That's different with Willie for obvious reasons, right? Like, Nylander holds the cards here in a big way. I think he's thought that he was likely going to be traded to this point. He doesn't want to leave Toronto. He wants to be part of the group and believes that he's played well. And I think that most of us would agree he's played well. So why should he have to take less when no one else has taken less in Toronto? So that's where it gets a little bit dicey. So Nylander, for me, is more of a hot button topic than Marner or Matthews on July 1st.
Yeah, and he'll be a UFA too, right? Like DeBrincat is an RFA now, and it's Willie's in a very, very advantageous position. He's a really good player, and I understand what you're saying, Noodles. I think you're saying if it gets to a point where it just can't happen, then maybe he becomes available, and then that naturally forces change.
That was kind of where I was going. I wasn't comparing. I'm just saying, I look at a guy like Jesper Bratt, who signed the other day for 7.8. Now, he falls underneath Hughes and Heischer and in there. There's a step ladder. Now, Nylander, I believe, I think we believe he's a better player, and we know he's a better player than Bratt. Yeah. But how much more? Yeah. That's my question. I think the Nylander contract is a really interesting situation because I think there's people that believe he's a double-digit guy, and I think there's people that believe he's something with an 8 in it. So what is that going to be? It's the value to the team because, like I say, I just that's the one where I don't know if there's a definitive that's the number for that guy. A 40-goal guy, 85 points, 2 times in the 80s.
Willie will wait, too.
Scoring.
Willie will wait. Nylander's not going to be forced into signing anything.
Well, that's my point. He might force them into having to do something either way. That's the most fascinating for me.
I agree, guys, but then I'm reminded of Pasternak in the Boston Bruins, right? David Pasternak's numbers, leading up to his contract extension were traditionally pretty good, weren't they? If not excellent, right?
Absolutely.
And in this conversation with his agent, JP, a dozen different times, I'm like, isn't he getting antsy? Why aren't you guys putting the screws to Boston? Get this deal done. And he's like, yeah, well, the longer they wait, the better it probably gets for Pasternak. And that's exactly what happened. So you look at certain teams and all that and players that play on those teams. And in Boston, we know who it is. It was Bergeron, then it was Marchand, and then it was McAvoy, and now it's Pasternak. It depends on the player. David Pasternak didn't care. He was willing to wait into February, March to get his extension. Maybe Willie's the same, and I think he is.
Yeah, and in the end, though, Pasternak wanted to stay, and you're saying the same thing with Willie. So, I guess we'll we'll find out. But I don't know. I'm intrigued how this all unfolds here in the next 2 weeks.
That one intrigues me, honestly. That's the one that intrigues me the most because I just, I think there's a ballpark of what he should get or what he's going to get, but it just, depending on time, if he goes and has another great season, then maybe the meter's running, or if he has a step back, then what does that look like? It'd be interesting to see how that unfolds and what his comparables are through the league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, he's got a pit bull for an agent, Louis Gross. So
we know, Darren. We know.
Yeah, we've been down that road.
Let me also guess. He's willing to go to the wire. Okay, we know that one too.
Yeah. I wonder where Tavares and Marner come into play on all this, though, because they have 2 years left. Tavares got a full no trade, full no move. I think Marner's. When does Mitch's kick in? Where
July 1st.
So he's got a lot of control as of July 1st.
Yeah.
I wonder where they're at in terms of what they. I would think Trey Living's spoken with them, and I would have to believe they've been reaching out or their agents reaching out, saying where do we kind of stand in all this and.
Or not. I mean, in Mitch's case, he knows what his contract reads, and if he doesn't, then his family is keeping him abreast on an hour-by-hour basis. But he's getting married this summer. He's got a lot on his plate right now. So we'll see. I don't think he's losing too much sleep over it. He wants to win, wants to be in Toronto. If Toronto doesn't want him, then I guess he'd have to be open to whatever the change is.
Yeah, one of many possibilities league-wide. And, as we get closer to the draft, every year we wait, for big action. And I guess, with the cap only going up so much, it makes it kind of difficult to anticipate what's going to happen. And that's another situation where Trey Living's got to deal with Matt Murray. He's got to deal with Jake Muzzin, who we don't believe will ever play again, but he's still going to be, on contract. TJ Brody going into his last year at $5 million. Yeah. These are all things that could be up in the air at this point, Dregs.
I hear you. No, I mean, you go through the Canadian markets, and Toronto is near the top. Certainly, it is at the top for our level of interest here. But there are some big questions and questions that require answers. But, status quo may not be the worst thing. But let's see. It's a very active environment out there on the trade front. And, we're more focused on what Philadelphia is going to do because every day there's a new player from Philadelphia that enters that realm of speculation and what is Winnipeg going to do and all that. But Toronto and markets like Toronto may benefit from that, from just kind of lying in the weeds and seeing what happens when clubs don't get what they want at the draft. Not by drafting, but via trade, and then free agency comes and goes. So there's months ahead here before they have to worry about it.
Sure. All right, Dregs. Thanks for doing this, buddy. It's a busy week, and I'm sure we'll do it again later in the week.
Yeah, sounds good, fellas.
There he is, Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota, and check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. I have more thoughts on that, but we'll save them because we got Nick Taylor coming up. Nick Taylor is coming up, and we'll get back into if nothing changes here with the main pieces. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, the U.S. Open is now officially behind us. Back-to-back national opens. Wyndham Clark, huge win yesterday, and up and down on 17 was incredible. The lag putt on 18 was incredible. Lag putts are cool, but making putts, that's really, really cool. Knocking in massive 70-plus foot putters.
What's the longest putt you've made recently, Hazy? Because I know you and your boy Nicky talked a lot of shop about putting, etc.
Yes, we did. We did at St. George's.
Stop it.
Yeah, and Tommy Fleetwood. This year, see Tommy go low again on Sunday. It was a lot of my P's and Q's. I saw him picking up on those.
Big influence.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've hit anything outside 15 feet. Truly, I'm a terrible putter. But we're building up Nick Taylor, who obviously had just an incredible week at Oakdale. He's had a great season overall, and he joins us back on Overdrive. Nick, we haven't caught up with you since the win. Congrats, man. It's how cool was that a couple of Sundays ago?
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. It's been been a crazy week following that unforgettable day. So it was fun to play the U.S. Open, see a bunch of the guys. I felt pretty with all of the congratulatory comments. People yelling off in the crowd, 72 feet, which is pretty funny. I also played 9 with Adam Hadwin. There was plenty of people checking on him and how his tackle was as well. So it was a fun week.
Before we get into the tackle and what you witnessed, it was so funny to see you so excited, and then you were like, holy crap, he just got trucked on the green. But, I know winning, it zaps a lot out of you, Nick. Playing the week before a major, and as awesome as that was, it's such a great moment for Canadian golf. When you get to the major, it's like, do you take too much energy? You almost taking the chance. It's like, if I win the week before, am I going to have anything left in the tank for the next week? Because I think traditionally you see it, unless it's Tiger back in 2000, the guy that wins, it's almost like a bit of a grind at the major the next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I definitely probably had more media stuff than I typically obviously would have probably any other week as well if I had won. So it was a couple days of just trying to manage my time, trying to get some more sleep, which was great. I knew it was going to be these few days. I thought I did a pretty good job of that. I only saw the golf course once before playing, so my preparation might have taken a hit that it typically would have, but I actually played pretty good the first couple of days. Each round I really didn't finish great. I was a couple over in the last 3 holes both days, which inevitably cost me making the cut, but it's a really tough golf course. It was a long golf course. I think I counted the second day. I had about 9 shots or approach shots over 200 yards for me. So it was a pretty big golf course for me. So, like I said, I felt like my game was actually pretty good. It just wasn't quite scoring as much. So, could equate that to maybe some loss of energy or just being a really tough golf course. So, I'm sure it was a combination of both.
Nick, after you win on Canadian soil, so much to take in. Did you get back to your phone and have 10,000 messages? Did you actually check your phone and it was something ridiculous?
It wasn't in the thousands. It was hundreds of text messages. It took me, I probably didn't finish until replying to most people, at least just with text messaging till yesterday. So I kind of put my phone away. It was overwhelming to look at. Because I wanted to get back to as many people as I could. I haven't even touched the social media aspect, so that'll be another undertaking. But no, it's all great. It's I feel very supported all the time, but especially after that, it's amazing how many people were glued to the TV and watching. So it's very cool to read all the messages.
Chatted with Nick Taylor, who of course won the Canadian Open at Oakdale just over a week ago. And that putt, you mentioned people yelling in the crowd, 72 feet, 72 feet. Just remarkable putt. If you were to go back there, if we were to place you in the exact same spot right now and give you 20 balls, how many do you think you'd hit?
Oh, 0.
0. So once in a lifetime putt.
I think you give a tour player 100 balls. I don't know if one goes in.
Yeah, well, I think the make percentage is obviously less than 1%. So there you go, right there. If you make 1 out of 100, you're doing pretty good. So
wow.
Yeah, it was. You could call it 1 in a million. It was for that moment. Very, very unique kind of moment. Walk off in that type of fashion is something you kind of dream of. So I've seen the clip plenty of times. I almost lose my perception of hitting the putt. Now I just see me and Dave jumping around with extreme. So I still get a kick out of the image in my brain is Dave Markle running at me going in. So obviously a very memorable moment for us.
Well, and then on top of it, Hadwin just getting buried. Take us through your peripheral vision there when you're celebrating with your caddy and your buddy Adam Hadwin is coming out to celebrate with you, and he just gets destroyed.
Just decked. The memes on him have been tremendous. I saw a segment on NFL Network. I've seen it all. It's funny. My favorite clip, honestly, was someone put Titanic music to him getting hit. I feel like Duffy had something to do with that, but that was That was awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, it was like kind of obviously so much was going on, and then see the corner of your eye, someone get tackled. That's the first sight I don't think we actually realized is happening. And I remember the clip, Dave, you could see him kind of chanting like, "Hey, get out of there!" But then he actually didn't even help Adam up, which is a bit of a tough scene. And went to go grab the flag because that's probably his most cherished thing in his life now. But yeah, a lot was going on. Pretty. To look back, I'm glad he's fine because that was quite the hit.
Yeah, that really was, and it was a wild Sunday in general. We're chatting with Nick Taylor. You get up and down for birdie on 18 to get into the clubhouse, and yet you're watching Fleetwood on 18, a hole that a lot of guys have been really beaten up all week, and he finds a way to par it, so it pushes to a playoff, and then he had multiple chances to close it. You know, at any point, I guess, you know, considering what I just said about him on 18, which was his 72nd hole, the multiple putts he had to close during the playoff, like, were you closing the book at any point? Were you thinking, man, I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to make this 72-footer?
Yeah, a lot goes through your mind. You know, when I'd finished, I think when I got into scoring, Tommy was realistically the only person that was potentially going to catch me in the clubhouse at 17, and then he had just birdied 16, so that was kind of like, okay, I was almost hoping for a playoff, and then when he birdied 17, I was like, well, you know, 18 is obviously very fun. And so we were kind of sitting watching, and once he hit it in the rough off the tee, that obviously gave me a little bit of life, and then when he laid up into the rough, you know, honestly, from where he laid it up into, it was almost a greater chance of making bogey from there than birdie. So that's when I went out and tried to stay loose, hit a few balls, and he made a great two-putt for par there. And, you know, even the first hole, I was sitting pretty on the green. I might have had about 5 feet, and he was maybe 15-ish. But huge putt by him there. And then to me, make it on top of it was obviously extremely crucial. And then, yeah, it sucks in those situations, like on the second or third playoff hole after I'd missed my birdie putts to have it out of my hands. You know, there were longer putts than, you know, I wasn't assuming he was going to make it, but it just sucks having no control over it. You know, fortunate for me, just slid by, and I felt like, you know, on that fourth playoff hole, the long bomb going in is there's definitely a combination of luck in there, but I was trying to hit that as close. So essentially he knew he had to make his putt to extend the playoff, and that was, you know, my main focus there. But yeah, when it went in, was pretty special. But yeah, it was a very, very roller coaster, hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh yeah, big time.
The finish in regulation throughout the playoff.
With Nick Taylor, and after you hit that putt, and you know the scene on 18, everyone immediately starts trying to label that moment in terms of Canadian sports history. And I don't know if you've been doing the same thing as a Canadian yourself, as a sports fan yourself, but when you hear, you know, your putt and what you achieved, finally winning a Canadian Open for the first time in a long time, a Canadian doing so, and you're hearing it in the likes of, you know, other great iconic Canadian sports moments, how cool was that experience for you?
Yeah, I think it's amazing that people are comparing that to. Honestly, that's probably the hardest part I'm having to come to terms with, in the sense that, you know, the first thing I think people were bringing up when I was getting questioned right after in the media center was, you know, I think people look at it in the likes of the Crosby Olympic goal and Joe Carter, and you know, that's not for me to decide. Certainly, for people to think that right away is a huge honor to be in that discussion. Obviously, it's my greatest achievement to date, and it'll actually be extremely hard one to top. So, you know, it's obviously a huge milestone in my career and everything that's happened. But to bring a lot of excitement to the country that I grew up in and love is obviously a huge cherry on top.
Yeah, it was incredible. It really was incredible. Yeah. And, you know, we got to see, obviously, that week at Oakdale, and I got to play with you in the Pro-Am
Hang on a sec. Did someone FaceTime Hayes and you saw him after you won that golf tournament?
Of course I did. We had to talk about the round, and how everything went down.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
stop.
right. Well, I wasn't going to bring that
Right.
up. That's good. That's amateur. Why would you bring that up, Nick?
Because I thought that you said, like, Duthie FaceTimed you and Nick Taylor was beside Duthie, but you're telling me you guys actually communicated after
It was
that,
an
Nick?
indirect FaceTime, but it was an understanding that it had to happen. And it was great to see Nick afterwards. And,
It was actually a very private. Well, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
That's right. Me neither. I'm not getting into it. I'd never get into those details. It was very private and it was very special. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Well, congrats, Nick. It was obviously an incredibly cool
Thank
moment,
you.
and sounds like you're still on cloud nine. So continue to enjoy it as you move forward, and we'll catch up down the line. Thank you for this.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate having me on.
You got it, Nick Taylor.
See,
My guy, Nick Taylor.
I got to be honest. Didn't we have Nick on a while back, and he asked if you shot left?
Yeah, I think that might
Didn't he
have
be
been
like? Didn't he go?
case. Putt
Did you
left.
shoot left? And
think
you
it
were
was
like,
shoot
no,
right,
I
putt
putt left.
No, it was worse, Noodles. He said, "Are you the guy that was the lefty?" Like he was just some bum. Some bum in a pro-am. It's like his name was Gary or Terry or Rick or something.
Well,
He's
think
like,
about how many pro-ams he plays,
Yeah.
and how many times he's got to interact with different people. And we talk about this all the time. You meet someone one time, and it means something to you, but for them,
Right.
like the celebrity, they're like, I can't remember details
Dude, do you have
of who
any
I've met.
idea how many times I get that? It's like, and I feel awful. And people are like, when you played for the Leafs, you had lunch at the restaurant on Yonge there after practice. I saw you, and I'm like, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, how could you
Or it's like
possibly remember that?
Yeah, the night you scored the OT winner in Montreal, my brother saw you outside the rink, and I'm like, first of all, you're like, I don't remember that, and it's like, what's the follow-up comment? Like, oh, cool, or
Yeah, say hi
you don't
for
know
him.
what to say. You don't know what to say.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
the same thing probably applies with Nick, and listen, he said it, hundreds and hundreds of people reaching out, not even getting into social media because of how many people probably sent him a DM, how many people were, adding, him and linking him in, and
Yeah.
just an incredible moment and a credible week. And you're right, though, about like not the letdown, but like when you're on such a high and the whole world is trying to get to you, and then you got to focus and get right back at it for the
For
US
that monster
Open.
course.
Well,
That's so tough to do.
think
so
of the
tough.
block party. The block party, and now
That's
Nick Taylor's
extreme, but you're right. Noodles.
exactly.
You're right.
Like Nick Taylor is awesome and a tour
Like a
player.
legit
and fantastic. Exactly. He's not tin cup, but the block party was on such a high, and doing interviews and calls and all that. Like he barely could get it together. I don't think he got it together.
No, he
for
didn't.
another round.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
You
At
know?
Colonial, I think he shot 80. Justin
4
Thomas.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. JT shooting 81 is, man.
Dude, he's a mess.
He's
a
in
mess.
a really bad. Like people are gifting him the Ryder Cup. I don't know, man. I don't know if he. I don't think he's a
Him
captain's
and Jordan
pick right now.
Spieth, until they're 40 years old, will be going out first together and rinsing people. Those two are unstoppable at the Ryder Cup. You're not fighting me on that one.
I don't know, man. If you're a mess, you're a mess. Well, so Ricky Fowler was a lock Ryder Cup guy not so long ago. He played himself out of it.
Dude, are you actually? You're
I'm
gonna.
going to give you a take right now. Justin Thomas does not deserve to play on the Ryder Cup team.
That's
Doesn't
a spicy
deserve it,
take.
the way he's
spicy
playing.
take.
Doesn't deserve it. Not over Dustin Johnson. Not over Brooks Koepka. Bryson DeChambeau's been better recently. No question.
Spicy
JT just
take.
shot 81. He said he's in the worst place. It's like rock bottom. He's a mess. He's a mess right now.
Wow.
That's a
That's
take.
the
for
dumbest thing you've ever said on the
a
show.
take.
And that's saying something.
It's a strong take. I'd take Wyndham Clark over Justin Thomas.
Holy
right now.
Oh,
at the
yeah.
Ryder Cup.
Wyndham Clark over Justin Thomas at the Ryder Cup. Have you ever seen Spieth? Joe from the Bridge, when we come back, I want Justin Thomas's record with Jordan Spieth in like 4-ball foursome. Please, I
All
want
right.
that record.
We'll figure it out. Scotty Mitchell coming up on the Jays in Miami, dropping 2 of 3 over the weekend, including blowing a 6-0 lead, and Alejandro Kirk on the IL now. What happens from here for the Jays? We'll catch up with Scotty in about 20 minutes. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Scott Mitchell in about 15 minutes. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Prior to taking some time off, we had Brian Windhorst on with us, and we were talking about, Denver about to win the NBA title and super teams possibly coming to an end. And then Bradley Beal gets flipped to Phoenix to team up with Kevin Durant.
Is he
Devin
factored
Booker.
in as being a part of a super team? Like,
if Bradley Beal's your number 3, you're close to being big 3. I think that's a legit big 3. Like, legit big 3. He's been lost in Washington. They've been so bad for so long.
Is that what it is? Or it's like he's not like – he's got a massive contract, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was the only player in the league with a no-trade clause, which made no sense. So he controlled a lot of this. But what sticks out to me is it's another chance for Kevin Durant to finally get it right without having to join Steph Curry, right?
Yeah.
Like he had it in Oklahoma City. They got to a final. They couldn't do it. Obviously, he had it in Brooklyn in multiple variations. Couldn't work for him. Now he's in Phoenix, and you got Booker. You've got maybe DeAndre Ayton sticks around. Now you got Bradley Beal.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see what his role is because he's not exactly the KD of any KD.
Exactly. But it's Kevin Durant with a bunch of really good players around him. Let's see what happens. And
well, maybe he gets it done this time.
Possibly.
Who knows?
Possibly. You got a lot of talent there for sure. But he had a lot of talent in Brooklyn. It didn't matter.
Yeah,
a lot of
true.
talent in Oklahoma City. And Windhorst was referencing the new rules that are coming in that are the NBA is trying to force parity, but they're still a couple years away from going. So maybe this is the new owner in Phoenix saying, let's just gun it for a couple of years.
Yeah,
Let's gun it. Exactly. Let's spend money, go well above the luxury tax. Let's go all in here. New coach. Frank Vogel's down there, who's won before. Give it a shot. But the NBA rumor mill, it's flying already, man. You know what's amazing about the NBA rumor mill is you get reports on players teams have just decided they're going to target to go get without any understanding if the player's even available.
Like collusion, not even collusion, just like that.
It's
we're
just,
here that they like that.
Yeah, like I read over the weekend, Miami's focused on Damian Lillard. It's like, okay, is he available? Does he want to leave Portland? And who's making that call? Just Pat Riley's calling up Woj and saying, hey, throw that out there. I'm going to go get Damian Lillard.
Maybe that's what they want, though. Instead of like having one of their players call Dame, they just say to an insider, "Can you just toss that out there, at least to get Dame's attention?" And then maybe he reaches out to Jimmy Butler, and maybe something can happen. Maybe that's just the game they play.
It very well could be the case. It's almost not collusion because you're not doing it behind closed doors. You're doing it so publicly.
Yeah, or you're just looking for a relationship. Like maybe Dame saw Pat Riley at a restaurant a couple of years ago, and it's like he's just wanting to see if they can connect somehow. Who knows, man?
Who knows? Who knows? And there's some reports out there about how teams are feeling about the way the Raptors are operating. And if the report is true, I actually think it's a good thing. I think it's a compliment to the Raptors front office. We'll tell you about that. We'll get into it in the final hour. Jay's back in action tonight in Miami. We'll tee that up with Scott Mitchell. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050, soon to be up on TSN 2.